Hello, everyone. My name is Ninad Desai. I am a Bixi credential holder, and it's a pleasure to speak here at the Bixi Japan conference. A new experience for me, and I should say a new beginning. And thank you to all my friends at the Bixi Japan district. Thank you to Rui for having me over here. And I would like to put my aspect to a very important subject that looks quite simple on the outside. We face it day in and day out, but what actually is in the core of this subject is a challenge that we all face anywhere in the global perspective. So, for me as a user in India, for you as users in Japan, and users all around the globe, we have an inbuilt challenge in having good quality, in building quality of service. So you have networks, you have communication, you have connectivity to the internet, you are always connected. But fairly, how many of us are really very sure or really very happy about the connection that we get in the places that we work, in the places that we live? Why is that so? Is it in relation to the technology that we are in, or is it in relation to the discrepancy that's there in the network? Are the service providers not doing their job properly, or is it the integrators who are taking us as users for granted? Many questions, and I had those as a technical mind, and I went into those particular questions, and there were some holistic answers that I could get which had some technical meaning. So the presentation that we'll have would not be a presentation which will be highly technical in nature, but will, yes, have a technical aspect to be able to understand what are the factors that really response us on the challenges in delivering, in building quality of service. To start off with, the traditional business model of mobile communications has always been disrupted by the mobile broadband service, enabling unprecedented user experiences, making a deep impact on every aspect of people's life and work. Wherever you go, you always see whether you have that mobile internet available with you. Are you always connected? If you are an international traveler, it's a lifeline for you. Uh, whatever said and done about mobile internet or wireless connectivity, it is this kind of connectivity that always stays with you at every point of time. So, accompanying the large scale commercialization of 4G, and now the fifth generation of mobile communication, that's 5G, that is being expected to be commercialized around 2020 as we speak. So, regardless of the advanced 4G network, it is still difficult to provide mobile services that need high speed, high reliability, a rapid response, and energy efficiency. Existing 4G networks at this moment of time aren't able to deliver instant cloud services, Internet of Things, considering the quality of experience that we have as mobile users. So now these characteristics have become vital necessities for the future. You can't live without those. And that's where especially services in the 5G era come into the forte. Having it in a seamless context inside a building where a majority of users live, they communicate, is found to be challenging more than ever in most of the cases around the globe. So, why is it so? What we look forward to discuss and understand in this interaction that would help us understand the scenarios, their challenges, and the way forward in a techno holistic manner. So, we are not going to look at it in a completely technical spectacle kind of a thing. Yes, it's going to have a technical tinge, but it's going to holistically kind of see where is it that we are lacking in. So let's kind of dive it into that discussion. What you see on the screen right now is a peephole. Uh, it's a hole which is there on your main door, which you kind of peep into to see who's come in as a visitor. So a peephole, as you would all be aware, is a small opening through a door that allows the viewer, that is the person in the home, to look from the inside to the outside. And that's where the whole core of the discussion is going to be today. Many of the problems that we face, we try to look them from the outside and not from the inside. That is where the challenge lies. So today what we do is we understand the challenge. The challenge is going to be the quality of service challenge that we have for users in the buildings. However, we look at this challenge from the inside rather than from the outside. So as well as today, it's a well-known fact that you have well-described use of wireless. You have smartphones, you have the laptops on Wi-Fi, you have the cellular networks. We can expect to see a huge number, of these new uses which will emerge as they have today, and many more as we speak. This means that today's implementations will require future proofing to support the unknowns of tomorrow. We may have built up our infrastructure, but we really don't know what's going to come in for tomorrow. So for property developers, for owners, the quality of the indoor network is going to be increasingly the key in determining the valuations and the rental occupancy. It's already being seen in hotels. You are seeing that, you kind of choose a hotel where you have had a good user connectivity experience, isn't it? It's now being seen in new builds. It will be an important thing that will happen for new ones as well as in today's constructions, refurbishments, to support adequate flexibility and headroom for the next decade or more. So it's very, very necessary that we see the possibilities of it happening from the inside and not from the outside. So the peephole is going to be important. Remember that peephole. You have to see it from the inside and not from the outside. Our mobile phone, it's a brilliant thing, isn't it? With an internet connection more brilliant than ever, has become an umbilical cord to the outside world. We now depend on it to do our jobs, our schooling, and to see other people. It's our primary source of entertainment, and we are using it a lot. Global Data did a survey, and they came out with a report. It was a report on the India Telecom Operators Country Intelligence Report, and I think it will fit on for the global scenario too. It was a recent report. It came out at the end of 2019, and it stated that low prices for mobile broadband services, affordable smartphones, and people's changing their video viewing habits have continued and will continue to drive monthly user growth. People are using their mobile phones, the networks, more often than ever. But here's the interesting part. Only 4% of the households have fixed broadband. What does it say? It says people are using their mobile phones, people are using broadband services, people are using video more often than ever, but they are not using fixed broadband for that. Only 4% of them are using that. So what are the other 96% doing it? Now they are making smartphones the only way to access the internet in many cases. So with more than 80% of all the mobile traffic either originating or terminating indoors, which means 96% of the traffic or of the communication or of the internet communication that's happening is happening on mobile internet, and majority of it, 80% of that 96%, is either originating or is terminating indoors, which is in the buildings. Just kind of go back and see how many of those mobile calls did you do when you were kind of traveling, you were cycling, you were driving. Very rare. And those calls would be of very short durations. I just tell my secretary that I'm on my way to office, I'll be reaching in about 15 minutes, get my calls ready, and the call finishes. But what is the time? What is the energy? What is the aspect of mobile internet that you use when you are in your office, in your building, in your cozy homes? It's huge. It's about 80% that you do, right? So with this rapidly increasing adoption of 4G and Wi-Fi, that has driven that in-building traffic only in India at around 7 exabytes per month. Now let me tell you an interesting fact which most of you might have heard of in one form or the other. And that fact is of the Pareto principle, which states that for many outcomes, whatever is the outcome, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. Now, let me explain that to you a bit further. It's seen that globally, approximately 80% of the land is owned by 20% of the population. That's what it means. So consequentially, 20% of the people or 20% own 80% of the land. That's nearly the same of what Pareto principle says. Microsoft has also noted that by fixing the top 20% of the most reported bugs in their system, 80% of the related errors and crashes in a given system could be eliminated. Now you would think, what's this got to do when we are discussing in-building quality of service? Damn it, this speaker is really, kind of taking us nowhere. Now let's understand here a basic fact that buildings, and especially the high rises, are the originators and consumers of communication and information, resulting in 80% of the resultant traffic, to which seamless network connectivity plays an ever important role, ever, that is present. And these structures use less than 20% of the geographical coverage area. So we have a network consumption centers that are on 20% of the total areas being covered for delivering communication connectivity, but those are resulting in 80% of the traffic. Isn't that similar? So you have those buildings, you have those structures which are taking in just 20% of the land. Okay, but however, they are originators or terminators of 80% of your traffic. So that doesn't end here. 20% of these building infrastructures have been earlier the prime originators where content generation and consumption was at the maximum. Therefore, they had the best access to infrastructure. Just imagine a year earlier. You had those buildings. Now those buildings would be classified as residential and the buildings would be classified as commercial buildings. And the real traffic at the real extent originated majorly from the commercial guys. So you have those big offices, many seats, people working on it, lot of internet speed and bandwidth required. So service providers had concentrated their requirements to this big high rises. Now what's happened after that? However, with the current global pandemic scenario and the work from home culture, the setup seems to have turned upside down. You really don't know where the real users are. So you might be the guy who might need the highest bandwidth in your office. But now you are no longer in your office, you are sitting in your home and you would need the same bandwidth there. So what has really happened is, it was very clear, the first principle where the service providers knew about it, that traffic originated and terminated, nearly 80% of the traffic, in buildings. We knew for sure which of those buildings were the highest originators of traffic. However, after this pandemic situation, it's got spread out in all directions. So you really don't know where the traffic is going to come from. What you really know is it's going to be coming from one of those 20% of the buildings which are there. So it's becoming difficult for everyone to kind of get ready to the requirements that would come up in the future. Now, this particular complexity doesn't end over here. It sets up a new challenge. To set the perspective on what quality of service is all about, which is the most disruptive communication mode that demands quality of service in transmission and reception, is not voice. You can do with a very basic bandwidth for voice. It's not even data. We might look at speeds of 10 Mbps, 100 Mbps. It's video. What really matters is bandwidth and latency, and that is what video demands. Video calls today have replaced face-to-face interaction with colleagues, with families, with friends alike. So it's not being a commercial requirement now. It's been a requirement where you need to interact with people. So your video calls don't end when your office finishes. You go back home and you say hi to your family who is not with you, your mom, your dad, your friends. You meet up, right? So that's where the video communication has grown, has outpaced what it has earlier. I'll give you a very simple example. What's there on the screen are the results of the famous video conferencing software Zoom that we are in today in this particular conference. The software Zoom, in the first 2 quarters of 2020 until June of this year, had revenues that were more than the past 8 quarters in all of 2018 and 2019 combined. Isn't that phenomenal? It absolutely is. The first 2 quarters of 2020 have outpaced the last 8 quarters combined of 2018 and 2019. And mind you, the first quarter of 2020 was not a pandemic quarter, really. Isn't that? So it was bound to come. Work from home, home entertainment is booming. The pace had started before this pandemic and is the need of the hour and is the new normal. The COVID situation has just got it a little sooner, I feel, than later, but it was bound to come. I happened to see the recent 2020 Gartner Magic Quadrant report that's just come in. And the report states on global meeting solutions that's available, and that report is available in a public domain. You guys can just go and have a look at it. That report clearly shows a shift towards video as the preferred mode of communication. Organizations are seen increasingly adopting to flexible work styles, to cloud meeting services that enable this flexibility. The report goes on further to state some very interesting facts. Let me share some of them with you. It says by 2024, remote work and changing workforce demographics will impact enterprise meetings so that only 25%, I repeat it again, only 25% will take place in person, down from the 60% today. So it would be only one of the 4 meetings that will happen person to person. Rest of the 3 of the 4 meetings will be online. 74% of companies are planning to permanently shift to more remote work as a result of their experiences during the forced isolation that's being caused by COVID-19. By 2023, that's the earlier year than 2024, 50% of all video conferencing room systems will be based on Android or Windows based appliances rather than our traditional video codecs. So what it kind of clearly says that this was bound to happen. It just happened a bit earlier, I might say. It's about 6 months to about a year earlier, but then it was bound to come. Number two, those changes uh, got us a little on the wronger foot, but then we all would have been in a case ready for it. So all these clearly point that the change is here to stay. It's here to stay forever, and it is going to grow in magnitude as the years go by. So once seen as an added customer benefit, reliable connectivity without any restrictions of speed and bandwidth all the time on any device from anywhere has now become a given expectation in our connected world. This expectation is why business professionals now consider their telecommunications infrastructure a fourth utility that is just as crucial to their employees as clients and clients as electricity, water, and HVAC. Telecom is that utility that we can't just do about. However, the connectivity experience is struggling to keep up with the shift. In addition to the increase in traffic, today's buildings' last mile connections are running over outdated cables and cabling infrastructure. Users who invariably are the originators and the consumers of this utility aren't too happy about their experience. Uh, why is that happening? We really know what we require. The market knows what is needed. The market is taking steps in that regard. We have the technology to do that. Still, the user isn't happy. Uh, have we given a holistic thought to why is that happening? I would want you to go a while back in history in the early 2000s of broadband and wireless internet. Gone were the days where we had those dial-up modems and then came in the broadband. You know, we just loved browsing the internet when the broadband came in, isn't it? We were just bored with the website just opening and we just could have a cup of coffee with the dial-ups. Broadband had started to replace dial-up in the early 2000s, with half of all internet users possessing a broadband connection as early as 2005 to 2007 in India. I think globally it would be nearly be the same situation. However, it often piggybacked on cables originally installed for voice or the good old coaxials, depending on your service providers. So if it was your telecom service provider and he was providing you a DSL, he would be providing you a DSL on a twisted pair where earlier you had your voice connection. So these cables and the backend technology were designed to pipe the data into the home and not out of it. So uploading a video from a home internet connection was flaky. It was disastrous. However, it was acceptable. Then, as there was limited content, users did not produce consent. They did not produce content for themselves and for the world to share. They were just kind of consuming content. So it was fine. Every user was working with it and there was no practical solution. The internet connection got congested when everybody in the neighborhood wanted to use that internet simultaneously. But God damn it, we were okay with it. It was fine, because we were quite happy moving from the dial-up to the broadband. What's important to note here is that the business delivery model was never constituted with the customer in mind, but with what was possible with the technology to be delivered primarily using what was available. So what was being available, we had technology override on that, and the consumer was given a product which he was said, you please be happy about it, and he had no other options. So the consumer's perception of he being the last mile in all the standards too now needs to have a paradigm shift to being the first mile, which is happening now. ICT infrastructure, cabling, and services within buildings now need to upscale from a reactive to a proactive approach. The advancement of communication and network connectivity is to the extent that it makes data sharing and data access seamless and straightforward. And the reason for making it possible in the least possible time is wireless, isn't it? Wireless really transformed everything. The technology of being connected and being able to communicate instantly gets deployed in many ways based on the application and your requirements. You just come in with your laptop, start your work, no need to find that damn cable. How is it going to be connected? I just have an access granted to me, I am up and running. So that convenience has really brought business to the forte. However, we fail to understand and comprehend in such situations that even for a wireless network, it's usually connected to a wired network at the backhaul. Hence, the most commonly used systems are always a hybrid of both wired and wireless network connectivity. Wired networks at the backplane provide the much needed reliability, speed, and security if they are designed and incorporated in the primitive stages of the building design and erection. It's very necessary when the buildings come up, the designers and the design planners think about how the network is going to come about in terms of the telecommunication cabling infrastructure. Many a times planners feel it's going to be wireless all the way. It's going to be wireless, but it's going to be wireless for the convenience of the users. The backhaul needs to be wired. It needs to be wired not just for security. It needs to be wired for reliability. It needs to be wired for redundancy. It needs to be wired for being there when the consumer or the customer needs it in the most utmost requirement. Now, it's very essential here to understand the chain. It's not only that there is an organization, there is a service provider who is providing you connectivity to the outside world using wired or wireless means, and you are getting connected. The link has many components to it. It's the service provider, it's the wireless networks, it's the antennas, it's the networks around you, it's the cabling infrastructure, it's the network equipment, it's you as the user, your network configuration, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. As we, in my 2 decades of experience as a planner, we always say this to the planner and the consumer and the customer. Your network link is as strong as what categorization of your link is. So if you are connecting a category 5E patch cord to maybe a category 8 network link, it's only as strong as your weakest link, gentlemen, because it's going to be a category 5E link only, because your weakest link there is that category 5E patch cord. A similar terminology here goes to the weakest link of the network, and this very well applies to the mobile network. Operators spend a great deal of time and money. Let me tell you, we just curse them saying that, the network's not coming properly, it's the operator at fault. But I have had experiences where we have worked closely with them, and they really spend a great deal of time and money optimizing their cell sites to ensure that we as users get the best capacity, the best coverage for our devices. Uh, you have made they have made ample coverage outside your home, your office, but however, you keep getting poor reception indoors. So when you do this or when you experience this, it's probably a clear indication that your building itself may be the culprit. Unfortunately, it's not easy to find who the culprit is. And the skill here is in finding the weakest link. So the most common one that we have seen is the building construction. Indoor coverage is rarely considered as a necessity in the primitive stages of building design and material selection. In fact, materials that insulate the best and provide the most structural strength are typically the worst offenders for reducing the indoor range inside your building. There's also a misconception that clear glass fixtures such as windows, which are the best places to gain access to a signal, while the clear area is ideal for letting in light, signals can bounce around or reflect away from your home or your buildings, especially if you have glass. This is especially true for windows which are double insulated. They are triple pane windows in newer homes, which reflect signals even more. The most deflecting ones, however, are the latest low emission, we call them low E windows, that keep the elements out to keep you warm or cool inside, depending on the weather outside. The low E applied to windows that helps block infrared light from penetrating the glass from the outside. In addition, low E helps keep your heating cooling energy needs, keeping you comfortably warm in winters or cooler in the summers. But the bottom line, they are much more energy efficient that help you save on the heating and the cooling costs and the cost associated with running your heating and cooling systems to save energy. But that's where the challenge is, as they are the worst offenders when it comes to signal degradation that results in more than a 30 dB signal loss. I would like to state it again. More than a 30 dB, and as technocrats, as designers, we know what a loss of 30 decibel means, which is a maximum of all the building materials. A brick or a concrete wall of a 6-inch thickness too results in a signal loss of about 7 dBs to 20 dBs. It really depends on what's the material. Is it brick or is it concrete? Concrete is a bigger culprit here. Brick is a much lesser culprit. And also it depends on the operational frequency. That's about, your mobile networks are working at 800 or 1900 megahertz, where the higher megahertz is always gets kind of disintegrated faster. However, low E gives you the most highest loss making thing of 30 decibels. So that's something which we completely do away with. Most of the planners go with low E requirements, and then when the building is up, you have huge problems of connectivity in the building. This could also be due to a cell overlap or a co-channel interference. So when your construction, your building is near 2 cell towers and it's receiving from that location, in-building users may experience reduced overall signal due to an effect which is called as co-channel interference, or sometimes called as crosstalk. So because both these cell towers transmit different information on the same frequency, the same frequency band, the combination of these two radio waves makes it difficult for your device to listen in to what one of the cell towers is saying. So it's similar to having a conversation in a crowded room. You just, fail to understand, and then you ask it to, relay again and again. So the presence of two or more equally dominant cell towers near your place results in a receiving equally strong signals. So which can lead to your end devices, be your routers, your modems, constantly swapping between your towers. And this is called as a ping pong handoff. So this can also be your weakest link in the system. Or your weakest link could be an antenna angle or a tilt from your service provider. So there are cases where your signal is still weak, even though the distance to the cell tower isn't too far away, and there aren't any major terrain obstructions. In these cases, the culprit is typically the angling of the broadcasting antenna. So the transmitting antenna is generally tilted by service providers to face below the horizon to focus their power at a small coverage area. So this generally happens at commercial buildings which might require a higher bandwidth, and a service provider might have given a dedicated antenna. He needs to tilt it so that he kind of creates a micro cell. This is often used in high density buildings so that the carrier allows to pack more cell towers into a small area without causing a co-channel interference. The issue of an antenna angling arises when the carrier does not deploy enough sectors to cover off the full 360-degree radius. So, in a nutshell, materials absorb signal power. They need to be chosen widely and wisely. But it's not just the building construction materials who might be the missing link. Your nearest mobile antenna orientation or the cell overlap or a co-channel interference due to the presence of two or more equally dominant cell towers in close proximity might also be the real culprits. So it's very, very important to understand where's your weakest link. Otherwise, we all will spend on something that is inevitable. So thankfully, due to the presence of a strong signal outside the building, which is normally there in the majority of the cases, it's usually not difficult to resolve this type of a black spot by addressing the need for a creation of a robust in-building ICT communication infrastructure that can provide seamlessly performing network in buildings. So how do we do that? What's necessary? And so the important aspect here is to have a clear insight on how are you looking at creating a conducive environment for the signal to flow in the building after the challenges on the outside are addressed, which I think, which happen. They are quite easy to be done. So which do happen to be diagnosed in a far less time than the one in the inside. And the core approach change that needs to work is to happen in understanding the requirement in their generic content. You need to know where the problem is on the outside, understand the problem, and then after you have done that, see to it that the signal, how can I get the signal at its full strength in the inside of the building so that it can be maximized to its maximum. The first step to this regard is always a need for a robust understanding of international standards and industry standard practices. These play an essential role in strengthening that weakest link. However, I would like to stress here that it's the local code that sets the foundation in providing the primitive guidance in this regard. You might have various good international standards and practices, but as countries grow in their own individual silos, they will always worship the local code. So if you have many international standards to work upon, however, there isn't any local code that addresses this, there is going to be chaos. And for that, one important thing that needs to be done by designers, planners, volunteers, and as we as credential holders and designers at Bixi is to liaison with the government authorities and have a code in this regard. Uh, in India, especially, what's being done is that India has a national building code. It's called as NBC, and the most recent one, which came out in 2016, now has a section on information and communication enabled installation. Uh, it's a section that's in the part 8 of the National Building Code of the Building Services, and it's included under section 6 if somebody is interested in going into it. And this is the first primary step in this direction. So this National Building Code provides a clear guideline on the design of the telecommunication spaces. It includes design perquisites on the ICT infrastructure front that would help enable key implementation areas in terms of their accessibility, administration, power, lighting, fire protection, bonding and grounding, environmental controls, to name a few. It also gives guidelines for selecting telecommunications media, cabling pathways, separation distances, and specific requirements, if any, for telecom infrastructure cabling in buildings. So it sets the stage. It's very essential because you might not be present at all places at all times, and situations might change. So there needs to be a basic rule book where the industry can rely on, refer, and that is local. That's very, very essential and very, very important as a primitive initial step. Step number 2 in kind of understanding the requirements and acting on it is having a people and industry practices ecosystem. This is what makes the difference that really matters. So therefore, creating a skills ecosystem that understands the technology shift and provides for the necessary ICT infrastructure needs to be in the place. I think the way to look at it is to have an education policy, and that gives an ample scope for institutionalizing such design skills as a vocation and creating new job opportunities. So core basic industry practices in building infrastructure design need to be mandated, they need to be practiced, and finally, the system's actual deployment through standard installation practices, proper cable termination, and adherence to fire and safety standards really make a very, very valuable difference. Having done that, it's also necessary that there needs to be an adherence that needs to be put to international codes. So after you have understood holistically what the requirement is, and you have known where the challenges are, you have acted upon it, now you have understood what should be the requirements on the skills ecosystem, on the local codes and the standardization part of it, it's very essential that we adhere to international codes and standards, because the world today is not local, it's global. Multinationals, companies, industries move at all corners and all parts of the globe. So it's very, very essential that we understand where do we stay, what do we do, has to be global in nature. Adherence to global standards is an essential part, and more important is formalization of our skills ecosystem that understands this functional design and integration requirements right to the right alignment to the bureaucracy with the leading industry associations. Associations need to liaison together with the bureaucracy, and it should be at the forefront of education and standards. Standards really allow us to understand that it's not a one piece for all approach. You have implementation best practices that are available for educational institutions and facilities for their infrastructure, which is a separate standard altogether. If I can recollect, it's the BICSI standard 001 that looks into educational institutions and facilities. Then you have the healthcare institutions, which have a specifically different requirement, has been taken care in a different standard, BICSI 004. Distributed antenna systems, DAS, standard BICSI 006. intelligent building and premises, 007. So these standards, what they actually do is that they set the things in place which have been in functional requirement put across by the local codes and the skill ecosystem. So standards are available at all areas, be it ICT cabling and related cabling infrastructure, or even standards are available in putting up the wireless local area network system. It's very essential that we know the right standard for the right requirement. So now there is always a thought project. It's basically when we are always task masters, isn't it? So there is always a thought process in most of the projects that says we are short on time. We should have done this yesterday. Today is too far. Let's get this done fast. And hence, let's address whatever we need to do later. This word later is a very confronting word. Okay, so let's address it later and let's get things moving for the time being is what always comes in. I personally feel rushing through something might save you time right now, but it will take you more time to do it over. So saving time is great. You need to do it, but it should only be when it doesn't come at a cost. But when you run the risk of making mistakes by taking the shortest route, you are not saving time at all. So if someone comes up and says to you that, we don't have time to do it right, just ask him a simple question. Gentlemen, when would you have the time to do it over? When it would be chaos all around. So, it goes by my experience, and I think you all will agree to that, is that quality infrastructures, be it an infrastructure or a network, which is just consisting of 20 to 25 user workstations, or an infrastructure which is thousands of cabling network infrastructure workstations. Any quality infrastructure can't be built in a day. But let me tell you, but once done, with the right approach, the right understanding, adherence to the right codes, standards, with the right understanding of connecting the codes with the standards, it is bound to stay and it is bound to deliver for its lifetime. So I hope the picture is now more visible than ever. The picture of those cities and those buildings which you see from the crisp of nature, is a building in itself. We cannot have a solution for all these buildings as one single solution. It has to be seen from the inside. And that inside is that in-building network which needs to be designed so that the amount of infrastructure, the amount of capex, and the amount of opex that the industry has put in to give you that unsurmountable speed on the outside is delivered to the consumer from the inside. That's it from me. It was really an interesting interaction with you guys, and I hope it made sense holistically and technically for you to understand how to approach and how to get things right at the right place and the right time. Thank you. Thank you for joining.